Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Commodity TV and a new edition of our online interview presentation. And we have here Labrador Uranium and Phil Williams, the interim CEO, is here with us. Good morning to Canada. How are you, Phil?
I'm well. How are you doing?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. All fine so far, as we discussed up front. And I'm really happy that I have you here today with Labrador. I'm also a shareholder of the company. I have to disclose that up front. As you know, I'm like you, a big uranium bull. And I found, your company is a spin out of Consolidated Uranium. And I think a lot is going on because you also released big assay results from the 2022 exploration program. And you have a lot in 2023 in front of you. And so we thought it's a great idea if you give us a presentation and I will ask in between some questions. So I would say, Phil, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jochen, and great to talk again. So this is the overview for Labrador Uranium. We're focused on advancing and exploring a proven uranium district. So we're in the central mineral belt of Labrador. It's a prolific camp. There are existing resources there, including uranium resources that we own, and it's a very exciting prospect that we've been working on for about a year since we went public. There's some forward-looking statements, and so just to give you the overview again as to who we are and how we got here. The company was originally founded by a series of partners. So as you mentioned, it was spun out of Consolidated Uranium, but projects were also put into the company by Altius Minerals and Mega Uranium. Two names that your watchers might be familiar with. And between the three groups, we have a real track record of creating, financing, and advancing uranium companies. And then on the team, when I'll get to that in a second, we've really added a significant group of experts, both technically on the ground with significant experience, of course, in uranium exploration, but also in analyzing big data sets. And that's really what we have here. We have a very large project. There's a lot of data. And we've got experts there working through that data and using artificial intelligence to help us evaluate where the best prospects for discovery are. And we also have a lot of experience in Labrador, and as I said, in uranium, but also in iron oxide, copper, gold deposits, which is another type of mineralization that could be on this property.
I have one question because I read here 152,000 hectares. I mean, that is for Swiss standards crazy big. Yeah, because we are a small country. And I must say, isn't that a bit, let's call it too much for an exploration company? But how have you come to 152,000 hectares?
Yeah, and it is a vast property, and there's a lot of data. And one of the things very interesting about what we've been able to do is it's the first time that this entire belt, other than one project which is owned by Paladin that hosts the Michelin deposits, the first time this entire belt has been held by one company. And so you're right, it's a lot of ground. And so and we'll talk about this in a second, but we sort of have dual tracks for this company, both to grow and expand the existing resources, but evaluate that big property position. And that's where that artificial intelligence comes in. And we're doing some work. We're doing a very significant gravity survey across the whole project area this year. And that will let us really vector in on smaller project areas within the large area that we can focus on. And then ultimately we'll be dropping ground. We won't need that entire belt. Once we've figured out, okay, here are the most prospective areas, let's just focus in on those. Mm-hmm. And so, so you pointed out, it's a large land package. Again, we have historic resources. We'll talk about those in a second, and then new discovery potential, both around those resources, but on the broader project area. And, I'll reinforce again, and we'll do this several times in the presentation. This is a bona fide camp. There's a very large deposit that kind of anchors the camp in the east, and we have all the other ground. And of course, we believe that the time for Labrador is great. And the uranium interest is rebounding around the world. Even though prices are sort of hovering around that $50 level, we think there's a huge amount of trajectory for that price, particularly this year, and Labrador will be the beneficiary of it. Mm-hmm. Quick snapshot on the share capital. We have about 70 million shares out. One thing I'll highlight here, and I'll highlight it again later, is we're very well funded for this year. We have over $11 million in cash, and with $7 million of that earmarked for exploration on the ground work between drilling, prospecting, that gravity survey, We're going to spend a lot of money on this project this year. And we have a great shareholder base. So we list Altius there and Mega there. Those are those companies I mentioned at the beginning who contributed assets into the original company. But behind them, we have a significant list of institutional investors that have, over the last year and a half since we've been active in this company, have invested nearly $20 million in the company.
Wow.
And so we talked about the team. Myself, we've done this a few times. My background is been in the uranium space since 2006. I've been an investment banker. I've been a sell-side research analyst. I've also been on the buy side, and since 2017, I've been an entrepreneur starting and running uranium companies. Beside me on the board, we have lots of experience both in uranium with Richard Patricio, the CEO of Mega Uranium. Justin Reed was a uranium analyst and was also actually involved with Paladin Energy, who's the company that owns that other deposit in our camp, so really knows this camp. And then we have Bridget and Greg, they're our finance experts. But the technical team is really important to highlight. We have a local team of people operating out of St. John's, Newfoundland, that have tremendous experience both in uranium exploration. Most of that experience comes to the Athabasca Basin, which is the prolific area in Canada that all the high grade deposits are. But we also have structural experts in Matt Melnick and artificial intelligence experts in Paul Pearson. So we've got a really strong team for a small company. And then you want to talk about the region. So Labrador is a very mining-friendly jurisdiction. It ranks very highly in the Fraser Institute. It's got existing mines, some of the biggest, most prolific mines in the world. Quite frankly, Voisey Bay ranks very, very highly. There's infrastructure. It's politically stable. There's access to labor. So it's a very good jurisdiction. One of the things to highlight about the jurisdiction is it's perennially underexplored, and a lot of the discoveries that have been made have really focused on basic prospecting, where the mineralization was found outcropping, and we think there's a real opportunity to use advanced exploration techniques, including geophysical surveys, to give us some idea of what's below the surface and go and target that, which has been overlooked historically in the province. And where we are is a mineral-rich belt. We're in the central mineral belt. We've talked about how prolific it is and how there's already major resources there. But this area has attracted people for decades, particularly for the copper potential. But of course, uranium has really taken the forefront.
Mm-hmm. So would that mean that you go, let's say the focus is really uranium, but you would not have a problem if you have some beautiful bimetals?
Absolutely. And again, this is part of this dual strategy. We're very much focused on the uranium resources that we have on our project, and we're going to look at expanding those resources and finding more proximal resources within those trends. But we're not going to overlook other metals if they're there, particularly copper. Again, this is what attracted people to this camp in the first place. So part of the work that we're doing more regionally is, okay, where are the prospective copper areas? With copper well over $4 today, we think that's a pretty interesting and important part of the story that we will not overlook.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, yeah, so here we are. We've zoomed in on our property package. This is that large land position that we're talking about. And again, we'll highlight the main historic resources that we have at the Moran Lake C zone, which is on the left-hand side, western side of the trend. And then we recently acquired the Anna Lake deposit, which has about 5 million pounds of uranium. That's on the eastern side. And what's very exciting about that project is, again, it's the first time that entire trend has been held by one company, us. There's the known deposit, and we believe that there's good potential to find additional deposits along strike. And that deposit is quite close to the Michelin project. Again, we talk about Michelin time and time again. This is Paladin's 130 million pound resource on the eastern side of the belt. And so any resources that we can delineate proximal to that, I think will be very important for the company. So again, and we'll talk about this strategy. So the strategy is two-sided. It's near-term resource growth. So it's building on those existing resources at Moran Lake and Anna Lake. And we're really going to do that with the drill bit. And when I show you the results from last year's program, you can see where there's quite a lot of white space to grow the resources at Moran Lake. We have not yet drilled Anna Lake, but we'll be looking at doing that this summer. and then it's the district-wide potential and will generate targets and really project areas. So again, like as we talked about earlier on, it's about shrinking that large land package into multiple areas where we believe are highly prospective for new discoveries, and that's where we'll be.
Could you also imagine that you maybe partner on parts of the property with somebody?
Absolutely, that's entirely what we're looking to do. What we're looking to do is identify these project areas, work them up. We'll put people on the ground there and do surface work, and then if there are other groups that are interested in coming into them, we're certainly open to those conversations.
Okay.
We may, and it's very likely we'll save the best projects for ourselves, but we believe there's going to be a number of projects generated from that work, and it will be ultimately probably more than our company can handle on its own. And so bringing in partners will make a lot of sense.
Okay, super.
So I'm just going to talk about the historic resource areas for a couple of slides. The Moran Lake C-Zone, this was really the anchor project when we spun the company out in the first place. It was explored between 2006 and 2013. About $25 million was spent on it historically. Importantly, it has both a uranium resource but also a vanadium resource. And the vanadium resource is quite significant, and we showed it a few slides ago. It's about 135 million pounds of vanadium. Vanadium trades at $9 a pound. That's a very significant in-ground value, and uranium and vanadium do come together quite often around the world. And the uranium resource is just under 10 million pounds at this area. So this is where we went into drill. And the next slide here will show you exactly the drilling that we did last year. So we completed, and here we are zooming in a plan map of the C-Zone. So if you look in the map on the right-hand side, the red blobs, that's where the existing resources are. We drilled 6 holes for just about 2,200 meters, with the majority of those holes concentrated in between those red blobs. Where you don't see that it continues, our geologists, their view was there's a potential to connect those blobs together. So you've got the bulk of the resource in that C-Zone corridor. And then if you look further to the left where hole ML204 is, there's a smaller resource called Trout Pond. And so that anchors kind of the western side of that area. And we believe there was potential to connect those resources together. So we put some holes in, and we got very encouraging results. We hit uranium grades in excess of the resource grade at widths that were in the previous resource. Importantly, so just to take one of the holes in particular, hole 200, which was drilled just on the far southwestern end of the main C-Zone corridor there, we had a geological idea that below the main, there's 2 zones of mineralization. There's the upper C and the lower C, and we had this thought that the 2 zones might coalesce, and where they coalesce could mean that a blowout of mineralization, particularly in width, but maybe also in grade. And lo and behold, we got a package of mineralization, discrete mineralization over 70 meters with grades up to 0.31% uranium, which is a multiple higher than what our resource grade is. So very, very encouraging. And certainly this is an area that we're going to go back into for our next program. And then along that trend, so if we go further to the west to hole 201 and then 204, again, we got above resource grades in similar widths to what we saw in the resource calculation. So very encouraging. And this A1 corridor, we think this is a very prospective area to again connect those resource areas together, and that will be a big focus of our drilling for the coming season.
Okay, how many meters do you think you have to drill there? Just an idea.
So we're currently in the budgeting process. I would say we're somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 meters in total across the project. We haven't allocated where all those will go. So again, just to reinforce that strategy that we're talking about, which is growing the historic resource. So trying to expand on what we know is there in the C-Zone corridor. What we also believe is that within the larger trend from the previous map, and maybe I'll go back to that for a second. Actually, it's so here, so in the Moran trend here in the western side, there's a much larger blue sort of circle, And that's the larger trend. And we believe there's potential for additional discoveries on the trend. And so we could have multiple deposits. And so we'll spend some of our meters testing those further afield targets, and some of our meters in the C zone, in the A1 corridor at the C zone here, and then also at Anna Lake. So Anna Lake, this is the new resource, and we talked about it at the beginning. It's on further to the east, very proximal to the Paladin's Michelin deposit. And again, this is the first time that this whole trend has been owned by one company. There's about 5 million pounds of uranium at the Anna Lake deposit itself, with some other interesting molybdenum and rhenium credits there. But we think there's potential both to expand Anna Lake, and we think there's potential to find additional Anna Lakes along trend. And so we'll definitely be looking to target some of our meters at this project. And we just recently picked it up, and so right now we're just compiling all the data. Geologists are looking at it and identifying where the right places to drill will be.
Yeah, and I think with that moly price, it's getting even more excited.
Well, you know, and I hadn't even thought about that till it just came out of my mouth. Yes, molybdenum is very interesting these days, of course. Yeah. And so you know, and we look at all of the associated metals as sort of free credits for our investors. We're focused on uranium, but again, as we talked about earlier on, we're going to pursue other metals if they're there. And clearly, this belt has a lot of different metals in it.
Yeah.
And then Mustang Lake, that's another project to the east. That's a project that came in from Mega Uranium. There's some very interesting historic holes that were never properly followed up. We're looking to do a geophysical survey here to see what's happening beneath the surface, and if we can target some drill holes there, we may do that this year, or that may be the following year program. And so one of the things that I think is important to show investors who are maybe newer to the uranium space and trying to understand, like, where can stocks go? We've got a case study here and again, we'll talk about that Michelin project that's in the other resource, the big resource that's in this camp. They followed this trajectory. They did something very similar to what we've done with Labrador. They took their company public, Aurora Energy, back in 2006. They had a relatively small resource, 35 million pounds. They spent tens of millions of dollars drilling it and brought it up to over 130 million pounds. And in the bull market of 06, 07, they got their market cap up to well over $1 billion. So you can see in the green, that's their share price. That's where their market cap was. Of course, that was in parallel with the price of uranium making highs. And you'll remember in 2007, uranium prices peaked at almost $140. But you can see how valuations can get very high. And if we have, this is our business plan. Let's go take these historic resources, drill them, make them bigger. And if we get the tailwind of a strong uranium market like we think we're going to get, we think the returns to shareholders for this kind of strategy could be phenomenal.
That brings me to the question: what is your target for the uranium price within the next 3 years?
Within the next 3 years?
Yes.
Look, I think I do think that uranium prices can take out those old highs over the next 3 years. I mean, there is an inflationary factor here that on a real basis, it may not be the same price, but definitely on a current basis, I think that's very possible in the next 3 years. But a uranium price, I believe that the uranium price at least has to get into the 70s or 80s just to support bringing new mines on to meet demand. Where things get very interesting because there's been such an underinvestment in uranium over the last 10 years post Fukushima, we could have a real supply crunch as demand. The demand is there and grows, whether it's through reactor extensions, new reactor builds, or small modular reactors. Demand can move, I think, maybe even more than people think, and the supply response may not move as fast, particularly if prices remain low, because today's prices do not incentivize people to turn on new mines. And then at the same time, the supply side response takes time because uranium mines are notoriously hard to permit and hard to move ahead. So any company, and ours included, that thinks that if they say they can put a uranium mine into production in 2 years, it's probably really more like 4. And that's the history. That's just using history as a guide. So the supply side response may not come as fast as the buyers require, and so price could spike dramatically like it did back here.
Definitely.
Okay, so catalysts for the year. Again, we split in these catalysts into those two categories. It's near-term resource growth, so it's compiling the analytic data, identifying project targets for drilling, and then the follow-up drill program at Moran Lake, both within the main C zone area and along that trend. And then the district-wide project generation, you're going to see information on this. We're completing a very comprehensive, over 40,000 line kilometer airborne gravity survey across the project this year. So that's a big survey.
That's really a lot, yeah.
It's a large area, and this will be the first time that it's been done across the whole property.
Wow.
And we're very excited about the results. And again, that we'll use those results to vector in on those project areas so that we can really target areas that we think are prospective. And then very, very soon we're going to get the output from some of the machine learning and AI programs, and we'll be delivering information on that to the market. So that's the company in summary. It's district scale opportunity, well-known multi-commodity belt, historic resources with expansion potential that we're going to test this year. Very strong shareholder base, very strong backing, and I think a pretty world-class team for a company of this size, both on the technical front but also on the corporate front. So I'm very excited to be the interim CEO. And certainly we've got a number of candidates that we're talking to come in and run the company. I think that's another catalyst which maybe we'll put on the presentation going forward. But we will bring in more highly qualified management team to run this company going forward.
Okay, super. Then let me stop that here. Phil, thank you very much. That's great. And as I'm a shareholder of the company, I think that looks like the company is way too cheap by now. And what you want to do this year might, lift a lot of value.
Yeah, we definitely agree with that. And I think we're maybe a little bit misunderstood in the exploration space because there aren't very many uranium explorers that have that resource base to underpin their value, and then the same amount of blue sky that we have. So they might have the blue sky, but they don't have the resources. Or they might have resources, but not the blue sky. We have both. So I think we offer a very unique proposition for investors, and we have the team to go and explore, and we're going to put the money in the ground to evaluate the potentials that we just talked through.
Yeah, super. And as I saw, Dave Talbot from Red Cloud Securities has a $1.20 price target on you guys. And I know Dave from the good old days from 8 Capital. Jesus Christ, that's a long time ago. And I think I rate him still as one of the best uranium analysts in the world. So when he says $1.20, there must be something behind.
Yeah, no, Dave has been around for a long time. He knows the space as well, if not better than anyone else. And so and he's a geologist by background, so he evaluates it from the first principles of, okay, what do they have and what could it become? Yeah,
fantastic. So let's hope that the baby not only becomes but really grows. That's what we want to see, and that you can fill up this year with a lot of good news. And we look forward to then the new CEO, because you can definitely not lead 2 uranium companies. That's really a ton of work, I would say. And I'm also very, very positive on the uranium price. Honestly, my target is also closer to $100, $150 within the next 2-3 years. So yeah, I hope that you can repeat what Aurora did. That would be outstanding.
Absolutely. Super. I'm very excited.
Super. Thank you very much, Phil, for the update. All the best, and we talk soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that was Phil Williams, the interim CEO of Labrador Uranium. And you heard it. I mean, we are all uranium bulls, that is for sure. The world has turned. The demand is growing and growing, but there's really no supply in the short, no, even in the midterm. Uranium price is, I would say, nailed so far at $50, but that can change very, very soon and very, very fast onto the other side, meaning rising uranium prices, because there is really no new mine going in production within the next 5 years or even 7 years. And so from that perspective, when the demand is higher than the supply, you always get rising prices. And I would say Labrador Uranium is a really, really interesting company, not really on the expensive side. That's also for sure. I'm a shareholder in the company. I will buy definitely more shares into the company because I think the exploration potential is phenomenal. And please don't forget 152,000 hectares. This is crazy large in the neighborhood of one of the best uranium projects in the world, from the Michelin deposit. Don't forget that. So I think there's a lot of room for partnering, for expansion, for exploration, but for much, much more uranium, vanadium, copper, molybdenum. You saw it in the presentation. Check it out. Thanks for watching us, and bye-bye from Switzerland.